What if I told you that your biggest enemy when it comes to saving money isn't the economy, inflation, or even your annoying neighbor who always borrows your lawnmower? It's actually someone much closer to home. Someone who lives in your house, knows all your weaknesses, and has zero impulse control. That person is your future self. And today, we're going to learn how to outsmart them before they drain your bank account dry. I'm Dan, and welcome back to Dan Does Finance, where we make money moves that actually make sense. If you've ever wondered why you keep making financial decisions that seem brilliant at 2 a.m., but absolutely terrible 3 months later, you're in the right place. We're about to dive into the fascinating world of behavioral economics and discover why your brain is basically a financial saboteur wearing your face. Let me paint you a picture. It's Friday night, you're scrolling through your phone, and suddenly you see the perfect vacation package deal. Your present self thinks this is genius. You deserve this trip. You work hard. You'll figure out the money situation later. Fast forward 2 months, and your future self is eating ramen noodles for the third week straight, glaring at that vacation charge on your credit card statement like it personally insulted your mother. This happens because our brains are wired with what psychologists call temporal discounting. Essentially, we value immediate rewards much more than future benefits, even when those future benefits are objectively better. It's like our brain has a rebellious teenager living inside it that screams, "I want it now," every time we see something shiny. The good news is that once you understand how this mental trickery works, you can turn the tables and use your brain's own quirks against itself. Think of it as financial jiu-jitsu, where you redirect your impulses instead of fighting them head-on. The first weapon in your anti-future self arsenal is what I call the cooling off period rule. Whenever you want to make any purchase over a certain amount, you enforce a mandatory waiting period. For purchases between $50 and $200, wait 24 hours. For anything over 200, wait a full week. For major purchases like cars or furniture, make it 30 days. Here's why this works so beautifully. Your present self might be fired up about buying that expensive coffee machine, but your brain's excitement literally decreases over time. It's like emotional inflation in reverse. What feels like a desperate need today often feels completely ridiculous next Tuesday. I've saved thousands of dollars simply by forgetting what I thought I desperately needed last week. But waiting periods alone aren't enough because your future self is sneaky. They'll find ways to rationalize purchases that your present self already pre-approved. This is where technique number 2 comes in, the future self intervention letter. Whenever you're considering a significant purchase, write a letter to your future self explaining why you think this purchase is a good idea. Be specific about how you plan to pay for it, what sacrifices you're willing to make, and how this fits into your larger financial goals. Then seal it in an envelope and don't open it until your cooling off period is over. When you read that letter later, you'll often discover that your reasoning was built on emotional quicksand. Your present self might write something like, "I need this expensive gym membership because I'll definitely work out every day." Your future self reads this 2 weeks later while wearing the same pajamas for the third consecutive day and laughs until they cry. The third strategy is perhaps the most powerful, automating your financial decisions before your future self gets a vote. This means setting up automatic transfers to savings accounts, automatic bill payments, and automatic investment contributions that happen before you even see the money in your checking account. Your future self can't spend money they never knew existed. It's like being your own financial guardian, making responsible decisions when you're thinking clearly and then removing the option for your emotional self to mess things up later. I call this the Ulysses strategy, after the Greek hero who had himself tied to the mast so he couldn't steer his ship toward the siren song. Speaking of automation, let's talk about the envelope method with a modern twist. Instead of using physical envelopes, create multiple savings accounts with specific names and purposes. Have accounts labeled Emergency Fund, Vacation Money, New Car Fund, and Future Dan's Coffee Addiction. The key is making the money feel earmarked for something specific. When your future self sees $500 in an account called Emergency Fund, they think twice about whether that new gadget truly qualifies as an emergency. But if they see $500 in a generic savings account, it just looks like money waiting to be spent on whatever catches their fancy. Here's where things get really interesting. You can actually use your future self's predictable behavior patterns to your advantage. For example, if you know you always overspend during the holidays, start a holiday spending account in January and automate weekly contributions. By December, you'll have a substantial fund that your present self created specifically to prevent your future self from going into debt. The fourth technique involves what I call strategic inconvenience. Make it harder for your future self to make impulsive financial decisions by creating friction in your spending process. Remove your credit card information from online stores. Use cash for discretionary spending. Keep your emergency fund in a bank across town instead of where you do your regular banking. Every extra step between your future self and a purchase gives their rational brain time to catch up with their emotional brain. It's like installing speed bumps on the highway to impulse purchases. But let's address the elephant in the room. Some of you are thinking this all sounds great in theory, but what about legitimate emergencies or opportunities? How do you distinguish between future self-sabotage and genuine needs? This is where the 24-hour rule gets a modification. For anything that feels urgent, write down 3 alternative solutions to the problem that don't involve spending money. If you can't come up with 3 alternatives, or if none of them would actually work, then you might have a genuine situation that requires spending. The fifth strategy is perhaps the most psychologically sophisticated, creating competing future selves. Instead of just thinking about avoiding negative outcomes, create vivid mental images of the positive future self you're working toward. Give this future self a name, a lifestyle, and specific goals. When your present self wants to buy something expensive, ask whether this purchase moves you closer to or further from that ideal future self. Suddenly, the decision isn't about depriving yourself today, it's about choosing which version of your future self gets to exist. I want you to try an exercise right now. Close your eyes and imagine yourself 5 years from now, having made consistently good financial decisions. What does that person's life look like? How do they feel when they check their bank balance? What opportunities do they have that current you doesn't? Now imagine the version of yourself that gave in to every financial impulse over the next 5 years. What does their life look like? How do they feel about money? What opportunities have they missed? The gap between these two futures is created entirely by the small financial decisions you make every single day. Your future self isn't some separate person you'll become. They're the inevitable result of choices you make right now. Here's the beautiful irony in all of this. By setting up systems to outsmart your future self, you're actually becoming the person who doesn't need to be outsmarted. The habits you build to protect against poor financial decisions gradually become your natural way of thinking about money. Your present self starts making decisions with your future self's best interests in mind, not because you're forcing yourself to, but because you've literally rewired your brain to think long-term first. The final piece of this puzzle is celebrating your victories. Every time you successfully avoid a financial decision that would have hurt your future self, acknowledge it. Keep a list of purchases you didn't make and add up the money you didn't spend. At the end of each month, transfer that amount to a special Future Self Victory account. This creates a positive feedback loop where good financial behavior gets rewarded immediately instead of only paying off in the distant future. You're essentially hacking your brain's reward system to prefer delayed gratification. Remember, outsmarting your future self isn't about becoming a financial robot who never enjoys anything. It's about making sure your enjoyment today doesn't come at the expense of your happiness tomorrow. It's about becoming the kind of person whose present self and future self are finally on the same team. So here's your homework. Pick one of these strategies and implement it this week. Set up that cooling off period rule, write a letter to your future self, or create that specialized savings account. Start small, but start today, because your future self is probably already planning their next financial shenanigan. What strategies have you used to outsmart your own spending impulses? Drop a comment below and let me know which of these techniques you're going to try first. And if this video helped you think differently about your financial decisions, hit that subscribe button so we can keep outsmarting our future selves together.